The ships came down from the sky on a Tuesday morning. They were not like anything humans had ever seen before. The vessels were made of something that looked like living crystal. They caught the sunlight and broken into 1,000 colors. Each ship was the size of a small city, and they moved without any sound at all. People all over the world stopped what they were doing. They looked up. Some ran. Some screamed. Most just stood there with their mouths open, watching the impossible become real. The largest ship landed in the water near Seoul, South Korea. It floated there like a glass mountain, sending gentle waves toward the shore. Millions of people watched from the city. Cameras from every news station in the world pointed at it. The whole planet held its breath. A door opened in the side of the crystal ship. A ramp made of light stretched down to the water's surface. And then they came out. The aliens were tall and thin. Their skin glowed softly, like the moon on a clear night. They had 6 arms, each one ending in fingers that looked like flower petals. Their faces had no mouths, only large eyes that shifted colors as they moved. They walked on 2 legs, but their steps were so light they barely touched the ground. The leader of these beings called himself Toro. He was their ambassador, their speaker. A small device on his chest turned his thoughts into words that humans could understand. Within hours, Toro stood before the United Nations. Every leader, every general, every important person on Earth watched him speak. Some were in the room. Most watched on screens from far away. Toro bowed his glowing head and began. People of Earth, we are the Valari. We have traveled across the stars for 10,000 of your years. We have seen many worlds. We have met many peoples. And we have come to you now with a warning. The room was completely silent. Not even the sound of breathing could be heard. There is a great evil moving through the darkness between stars, Toro continued. We call them the Swarm. They are not like us. They do not think. They do not feel. They only hunger. They consume everything in their path. Planets, moons, stars themselves. Nothing can stop them. He paused. His eyes shifted from blue to deep purple. The swarm has destroyed 17 civilizations. 17 peoples, gone forever. Trillions of lives, erased from existence. And now, they come here. They come for Earth. In 40 of your days, they will arrive. A murmur went through the crowd. Fear began to spread like cold water. We offer you what we can, Toro said sadly. Our ships can carry 3 million humans to safety. We will take you to a distant world where the swarm will never find you. It is the best we can do. The only thing we can do. He lowered his head again. We are sorry. We are so very sorry. For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of his words pressed down on everyone in the room. 3 million out of 8 billion. It was nothing. It was barely a whisper of humanity. Then a man stood up from the Korean section. He was older, with gray in his hair and lines on his face that told stories of many hard years. His name was Hyun-woo Park, and he was an admiral in the Korean Navy. He had fought in 3 wars. He had buried friends. He had seen the worst that humans could do to each other, and he was smiling. Ambassador Toro, he said, his voice calm and steady. You say this swarm has destroyed 17 civilizations. Tell me, how did those civilizations fight back? Toro seemed confused by the question. They used their most powerful weapons. Energy beams. Force shields. Gravity bombs. All failed. The swarm adapts to everything. They learn and change. How long did those civilizations resist? The longest was the Kethany. They fought for 12 days before they were consumed. Hyun-woo nodded slowly. He looked around the room at his fellow humans. He saw fear in some eyes, yes. But he also saw something else. Something that Toro had never seen before in all his travels. He saw anger. He saw stubbornness. He saw a refusal to accept what could not be changed. "Ambassador," Hyamu said, "I thank you for your warning. I thank you for your offer to save some of us. But I think you have made a mistake." Toril tilted his head. "A mistake?" "Yes. You see, you came here thinking we were victims. You came here thinking we needed to be rescued." Hyamu walked forward, his old bones moving with the strength of purpose. "But we are not victims. We have never been victims. We are humans." He stood directly before the alien ambassador now. Despite being shorter, despite being older, despite having no glowing skin or crystal ships, Hyamu seemed somehow larger. "For 10,000 years, we have been killing each other," he said. "We have invented 1,000 ways to destroy. We have burned cities. We have split atoms. We have poisoned lands and darkened skies. We have done terrible, terrible things, Ambassador. And we have survived them all." He placed his weathered hand on Toril's thin shoulder. The alien trembled at the touch. "You did not bring us a warning," Hyamu said softly. "You brought us a target. For the first time in human history, we have an enemy that is not ourselves. An enemy we can fight without guilt. An enemy we can destroy without mercy." His smile grew wider, and in it was something that made Toril step back in fear. "We are not the ones who need saving, Ambassador. Tell your people to stay and watch. What happens next will be something the galaxy has never seen." Across the United Nations, humans began to stand. Not in fear, not in surrender. In readiness, the warning had been delivered. But the threat was not what Toril thought it was. The threat was humanity itself. The world changed in 3 days. Every country on Earth stopped fighting each other. Every war ended. Every border dispute was forgotten. For the first time in human history, 8 billion people looked in the same direction and saw the same enemy dot in Seoul. A young woman named Yuna Shin worked without sleep. She was a scientist who studied life on other worlds. Before the aliens came, her work had been just dreams and theories. Now it was the most important job on the planet. The Valari shared everything they knew about the swarm. They gave humans their records, their research, their memories of watching civilizations fall. They did this because they believed it would help humans accept their fate. They thought that once humans understood how hopeless things were, they would get on the ships and flee. They were wrong. Yuna spread the data across her screens and studied it for hours. The swarm were living things. They had hard shells like insects. Their blood was like acid. They could change their bodies to fight against any weapon. If you shot them with fire, they grew skin that could not burn. If you shot them with electricity, they became immune to shock. They learned faster than any creature Yuna had ever seen. But Yuna noticed something. She called in her colleague, a young man named Do-Hwan Lee. He was a physicist who studied things smaller than atoms. His ideas were so strange that other scientists called him crazy. But Yuna knew that crazy ideas were exactly what they needed now. "Look at this," she said, pointing at the screen. "The swarm adapts to energy weapons. Lasers, plasma, radiation. They become immune within 3 attacks." Do-Hwan leaned forward. "But what about physical attacks? Simple force?" Yuna smiled. The Valari never tried. They think physical weapons are primitive, barbaric. They stopped using them 1,000,000 years ago. Do-Hwan laughed. It was not a nice laugh. Then, they forgot the first rule of killing. Mass times speed equals death. You can adapt to energy. You cannot adapt to a rock moving at half the speed of light. They took their findings to General Jisoo Kang. She was the head of Earth's new Defense Council. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a mind like a steel trap. She had never lost a battle in her career, and she did not plan to start now. "We can hurt them," Yuna explained. "Physical weapons. Bullets, missiles, kinetic strikes. Things that hit hard and fast. Jisoo nodded slowly. We have those. We have plenty of those. She turned to another man in the room. Minho, what do we have ready? Minho Choi was old, with hands scarred from years of building things that could destroy. He was the head of weapons development, and he had been waiting his whole life for this moment. I have been building something for 20 years, he said. Something they told me was too dangerous. Too extreme. They said I was insane to even imagine it. He pulled up images on the screen. They showed massive machines attached to asteroids. Huge metal arms that could grab rocks the size of mountains and throw them across space. I call it Project Hammer, Minho said. We put these machines on 12 asteroids. We point them at our enemies. And we throw mountains at them at speeds that make nuclear bombs look like firecrackers. Jisoo studied the plans. How long to build them? If every nation works together, 38 days. Then we have 2 days to spare. Jisoo stood up. Get started, now. Across the world, factories that had made cars now made weapons. Mines that had dug for gold now dug for tungsten and iron. Ships that had carried food now carried soldiers and missiles. Every human with hands to work did their part. President Yoon Ji-beek spoke to the world from Seoul. She was a strong woman, the first female leader of the United Earth government. Her voice reached every corner of the planet. We will not run, she said. We will not hide. We will not beg for mercy from things that have no mercy to give. We are humans. We have faced extinction before. Ice ages, plagues, wars that killed millions. And we are still here. We are always still here. Her words echoed in every language, in every home, in every heart. The swarm thinks we are prey. They think we will lie down and die like all the others. But they have never met anything like us. They have never faced a species that enjoys the fight. A species that has spent 10,000 years learning every way to kill. She raised her fist. We will teach them fear. We will show them what it means to face humanity. And when they run screaming back to the darkness, they will tell every other monster in the galaxy one simple truth. Earth is not a planet of victims. Earth is a planet of warriors. The crowd roared. Across the world, humans roared with them. Ambassador Toro watched all of this with growing terror. He had seen many civilizations face the swarm. He had seen brave speeches and desperate plans. But he had never seen anything like this. These humans were not preparing to survive. They were preparing to win. He approached Admiral Hyan-woo one evening as the old soldier watched workers build orbital defense platforms through a window. Why do you not fear? Toro asked. We have shown you the records. We have shown you what the swarm does. How can you still believe you can fight? Hyan-woo was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. Your people have lived in peace for 1,000,000 years. You have forgotten what it is to struggle, what it is to bleed. He turned to face the alien. We have not forgotten. Every human alive carries the memory of 1,000 wars in their blood. Violence is not something we learned. It is something we are. He gestured at the workers, at the weapons being built, at the whole world preparing for battle. The swarm is strong. The swarm is hungry. But the swarm has never faced a predator before. They have only faced prey. Civilizations that wanted peace. Civilizations that had evolved past war. Hyan-woo smiled that terrible smile again. We have not evolved past war. We have perfected it. And now, for the first time, we have a target that we can destroy without feeling guilty. An enemy that deserves everything we can give. He put his hand on Toro's shoulder again. The alien flinched. Stay and watch, Ambassador. You are about to see what happens when humanity stops fighting itself and fights together. It will be beautiful. It will be terrible, and the galaxy will never forget it. 38 days. That was all they had. That was all they needed. Humanity was ready. The swarm came on the 39th day. They came out of the darkness between stars like a living ocean. There were so many of them that they blocked out the light of distant suns. Their ships were not made of metal or crystal. They were made of flesh and bone and hunger. Taeyeon Lim was the first human to see them up close. He was a fighter pilot from Bizen, 28 years old, with steady hands and a heart full of fire. He sat in his attack ship on the orbital station called Gwangjito, named after an ancient Korean king who had never lost a battle. Through his window, Taeyeon watched the swarm emerge from fold space. It was like watching a wound open in reality itself. First came the scouts, small creatures the size of cars with wings made of sharp bone. Then came the warriors, massive beasts with shells like armor and claws that could tear through steel. And behind them, stretching back farther than eyes could see, came the hive ships. Each one was a living mountain of flesh, carrying millions more inside. His radio crackled. It was Squadron Leader Sujin Wang, a woman with ice in her voice and fire in her soul. All wings, this is Leader. Weapons are free. Make them remember us. Taeyeon smiled and pushed his ship forward into the darkness. The first shots came from the orbital railguns. These were massive weapons that fired chunks of metal at speeds that made lightning look slow. The Valari had never built such things. They thought physical weapons were primitive. Beneath them, they were wrong. The metal slugs tore through the first wave of the swarm like stones through paper. Creatures that had survived laser beams and plasma fire exploded into clouds of blood and bone. They had never faced anything like this. They had no defense against simple physics. Taeyeon flew into the chaos with his squadron. His ship fired missiles filled with tungsten rods. Each rod was the length of a pencil, but hit with the force of a small bomb. He watched a warrior form the size of a house come apart under his fire. "This is too easy," said one of his wingmates. "Wait," Taeyeon replied. "They learn. They always learn." He was right. The second wave changed their formation. They spread out, making themselves harder to hit. They curved around the debris of their dead brothers, using the floating corpses as shields. And they launched something new. Millions of small creatures, each one no bigger than a dog, flew toward the human ships. They were boarding spores, designed to latch onto vessels and eat their way inside. On the flagship, Admiral Yi, Captain Hanyul Jiang watched them come. She was a tall woman with calm eyes and a mind that never stopped calculating. She had been prepared for this. "They want to take our ships," she said. "They want to learn how we fight." Beside her, Weapons Officer Ji Ye Moon had her hand on the firing controls. "Should we retreat?" "No." Hanyul's voice was cold as space itself. "Let them board the outer ships. The ones we prepared for this." The boarding spores reached several human vessels. They chewed through hulls and poured inside. The swarm's hive mind sang with victory. Soon they would have human technology. Soon they would adapt. Then the ships exploded. But not outward, inward. The humans had planted special devices on those ships. Tiny machines that created miniature black holes, lasting only a fraction of a second. But a fraction of a second was enough. The ships and everything inside them simply vanished, crushed into points smaller than atoms. Across the swarm's hive mind, confusion spread. This was not how Prey behaved. Prey ran. Prey begged. Prey did not sacrifice themselves to take enemies with them. On Earth, Dr. Unishin monitored the swarm's communications. They used a kind of mental link, a hive mind that connected all of them together. She had been listening to their thoughts since the battle began. "They are confused," she reported to the command center. "They do not understand what is happening. This is new to them. Good, said General Jisoo. Keep them confused. And tell the fleet to push harder. The battle raged for hours. Human ships died. Human pilots died. But for every human that fell, 1,000 swarm creatures were destroyed. The railguns never stopped firing. The missiles never stopped flying. And when the ammunition ran low, human pilots flew their ships directly into enemy hive vessels, turning themselves into living weapons. Taeyeon lost 3 members of his squadron in the first hour. He did not cry. He did not stop. He kept flying, kept killing, kept fighting. That was what humans did. That was what humans had always done. By the end of the first day, the swarm had lost 1/4 of their forward fleet. They pulled back to reform, to think, to adapt. They had never retreated before. They had never needed to dot in the command center on Earth. Admiral Hyunwoo received the reports. They had won the first battle, but he knew it was only the beginning. They will come again, he said, and they will be ready for our tricks. Then we will make new tricks, said Minho Choi. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but his voice was strong. We always do. On the orbital station, Taeyeon climbed out of his damaged ship. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding. But he was alive. And the enemy was not. A young medic named Ariam Han came to check on him. She had been treating wounded pilots all day. Her uniform was stained with blood that was not her own. How do you feel? She asked. Taeyeon looked up at the stars, at the distant darkness where the swarm was waiting. Hungry, he said. And he smiled. The first battle was over. Humanity had drawn first blood. But the war was just beginning. And somewhere in the void, the swarm was learning something new. Something they had never experienced before in a billion years of consuming civilizations. They were learning what it felt like to be afraid. By day 42, the orbital defenses had fallen. The swarm had adapted. They learned to spread out against the railguns. They grew thicker shells against the kinetic weapons. They sent so many bodies forward that human ammunition began to run out. For every creature they killed, 2 more took its place. The sky above Earth turned red with falling debris and burning ships. The swarm poured through the holes in humanity's defenses like water through a broken dam. Millions of creatures descended toward the planet's surface. In Seoul, Minho Choi stood in the underground command bunker. His face was gray with exhaustion. His hands were steady. Project Hammer is ready, he announced. All 12 asteroid stations are online. We can fire on command. General Jisoo looked at the maps on the screen. The swarm had landed in 3 main areas: Southeast Asia, Central Africa, South America. They were building hive structures, growing more warriors, preparing to spread across the entire world. If we fire, she said slowly, we will devastate those regions. Millions of humans still live there. Millions have already been evacuated, said President Yoon Ji-beek. Her voice was hard as stone. And millions more will die if we do not stop the swarm now. She turned to face everyone in the room. These were the people who would decide the fate of humanity. Scientists, soldiers, leaders, all of them were tired. All of them were afraid. None of them were ready to give up. Fire the weapons, Yoon-ji ordered. Destroy the landing zones. The command went out across space. 12 massive machines on 12 different asteroids activated at the same moment. They grabbed chunks of rock the size of mountains. They spun them faster and faster, building up energy. And then they threw 12 asteroids, each one the size of a small town, flew toward Earth at 17 kilometers per second. They did not aim at cities. They aimed at the swarm. The impacts were visible from space. Each asteroid hit the ground with the force of 1,000 nuclear bombs. The swarm hive structures in Southeast Asia vanished in a wall of fire and stone. The landing zones in Africa were buried under millions of tons of displaced earth. South America burned, but it was not enough. Some of the queen forms had survived. These were the heart of the swarm, the creatures that could birth new warriors faster than humans could kill them. They had dug deep underground, protected by layers of living armor. And they were still producing. Ground forces moved in to finish the job. Sergeant Dong-Yuk Ru led his squad through the ruins of what had once been a coastal city. The buildings were melted. The streets were covered in strange organic matter that pulsed like living skin. The air smelled like acid and death. His weapon was not a rifle. It was something older, cruder, more brutal. A chainsaw mounted on a metal shaft with a blade that could cut through the hardest shell. The Valari had been horrified when they saw these weapons. They called them barbaric. Dong-Yuk called them effective. The first warrior form came out of the darkness without warning. It was 3 meters tall, with 6 limbs and a mouth full of teeth like knives. It screamed in a voice that no human throat could make. Dong-Yuk did not run. He ran toward it. His chainsaw bit into the creature's chest. The blade threw sparks as it hit the hard shell, then broke through. The warrior form screamed again, this time in pain. Dong-Yuk twisted the weapon and pulled, opening the creature from chest to belly. Hot acid blood sprayed across his armor. The protective coating held, barely. "Keep moving," he ordered his squad. "The queen is close. I can smell her." They pushed deeper into the hive. All around them, the walls moved. Smaller creatures crawled through tunnels in the organic matter, watching them with hundreds of eyes. Some attacked. Most died before they got close. Private Ariam Han moved beside Dong-Yuk. She was the squad's medic, but she carried a weapon too. Every human carried a weapon now. Every human was a soldier. "They do not understand us," she said, as she shot a leaping creature out of the air. "They have never faced anything that fights like this." "That is because they have never faced predators," Dong-Yuk replied. "They have only faced prey. Civilizations that wanted peace." That thought war was wrong. He kicked in a wall of organic matter and found himself in a large chamber. In the center, surrounded by pulsing eggs and newborn warriors, was the queen. She was enormous, the size of a small building. Her body was a mass of flesh and armor and birthing tubes. She looked at Dong-Yuk with eyes that held ancient intelligence, and she was afraid. Through the hive mind, the queen had felt everything. She had felt her children die by the millions. She had felt the asteroids fall like the fists of an angry god. She had felt emotions she had never encountered before in a billion years of existence. Human emotions. Human memories. Human rage. The swarm absorbed the experiences of everything they killed. It was how they learned, how they adapted. But humans were different. The memories they absorbed from dying humans were not filled with fear and despair like all the others. They were filled with laughter, with defiance, with a terrible joy in destruction. The queen did not understand these feelings. She could not process them. They burned through the hive mind like poison, spreading to every creature in the swarm. Dong-Yuk raised his weapon. "You made a mistake," he said to the queen. "You came to the wrong planet. We are not your food. We are your death." The chainsaw roared. The queen screamed. Across the world, similar scenes played out. Human soldiers pushed into hive after hive. They fought with guns and blades and bare hands when nothing else was left. They died by the thousands. But they kept coming. In the command bunker, Dr. Yuna Shin watched the data streams with growing excitement. "The hive mind is destabilizing," she reported. "They cannot process what they are absorbing from us. Our memories are corrupting their network." Dawan Li looked up from his calculations. "Can we use that? Can we weaponize it?" Yuna smiled. It was not a kind smile, I think we already have. Day 42 ended with the ground war still raging. The swarm had been hurt badly, but they were not dead. And somewhere in space, more of them were coming. Humanity had survived another day. But the hardest fight was still ahead, and in the darkness between stars, the swarm was beginning to understand something that no prey had ever taught them before. Fear was contagious, and humans were made of fear turned outward. On day 47, Dr. Yunishin made the discovery that would end the war. She had not slept in 4 days. Her eyes were red. Her hands trembled when she reached for her coffee. But her mind was sharp as a blade, and it had found the answer. She called everyone to the command center. Admiral Hyan Woo, General Jisoo, President Yoonji Minho Choi, Do-Wan Lee, and Ambassador Taro, who had refused to leave even though his people begged him to run. I understand the hive mind now, Yuna said. She brought up images on the screen showing the neural patterns of the swarm. It is not just for communication. It is how they share experiences, how they learn and adapt. Every creature in the swarm feels what every other creature feels. We know this, said Jisoo impatiently. It is how they adapt so quickly. Yes, but it works both ways. Yuna's tired face broke into a smile. They absorb the memories of everything they kill. They have been absorbing human memories since the war began, and those memories are destroying them. She showed them the data. The swarm's hive mind was in chaos. Signals crossed and tangled. Creatures attacked each other by mistake. Queens gave orders that contradicted themselves. They've never faced a species like us, Yuna explained. Every other civilization they consumed was peaceful. Their victims died feeling fear and despair and hopelessness. The swarm could process those emotions. They were familiar. She leaned forward. But we are not peaceful. When our soldiers die, they do not feel despair. They feel rage. They feel joy in taking enemies with them. They laugh as they fall. The swarm has been absorbing these emotions, and they cannot understand them. It is like poison to their network. Do-Wan Lee stepped forward. He had been working on something for days, and now he was ready to share it. If we can push more of these emotions into the hive mind, we can break it completely. Make them unable to coordinate. Make them turn on each other. How? Asked Hyanwoo. We attack. Not to defend. Not to hold the line. We attack with everything we have left. We throw ourselves at them so hard that every death floods their network with human defiance. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what he was asking. He was asking humans to die. Lots of humans. But not as victims. As weapons. President Eunji looked around at her people. These were the survivors. The fighters. The ones who had refused to give up, even when the sky fell. Can we end this? She asked. If we do what you suggest, can we actually win? Yuna nodded slowly. I believe so. The swarm has never retreated in their billion-year history. But yesterday, they pulled back from 3 of our defensive positions. They are scared. For the first time, they know what fear feels like. Then, we give them more fear, said Hyanwoo. He stood, and despite his old bones and tired eyes, he looked like a warrior god from ancient legends. We show them what humanity really is. Operation Final Sunset began at dawn on day 40-8. Across the world. Human forces stopped defending and started attacking. Soldiers who had been holding the line charged forward into enemy hives. Pilots who had been protecting cities flew suicide missions into swarm fleet formations. Civilians picked up weapons and joined the assault. The swarm did not understand. Prey did not do this. Prey ran. Prey hid. Prey begged for mercy. Humans gave no mercy. And they asked for none. Sergeant Dong-Hook led his squad into the largest remaining hive on the planet. They knew they would not come back. They did not care. "Make them remember us," he shouted as they charged. "Make them tell their children about the day they met humanity." His squad roared and followed him into the darkness. In space, Captain Haniel Jeng piloted a single stealth ship toward the heart of the swarm fleet. Inside her vessel was a device that Dohan had built in secret, a weapon based on the swarm's own technology, turned against them. "This is Haniel to all human forces," she broadcast. "It has been an honor. Today, we end this war. Today, we become legends." She flew directly into the largest swarm hive ship and activated the device. It did not explode. Instead, it created a loop in space itself. Every time the swarm tried to use their fold space technology to escape, they found themselves back at the same coordinates. The same place where human weapons platforms waited with endless ammunition. The swarm was trapped for 9 hours. Humanity fired everything they had left: railguns, missiles, kinetic rods, asteroid strikes. The darkness of space lit up like a second sun as billions of swarm creatures died. And through it all, the hive mind absorbed human emotions. Human joy at destruction. Human satisfaction at revenge. Human laughter in the face of death. The swarm's network. Shattered creatures that had worked together for 1 billion years turned on each other in confusion. Queens that had commanded millions found themselves alone, unable to think without the hive. Warriors that had never known fear clawed at their own shells, trying to escape the human feelings flooding their minds. When the sun rose on day 49, it was over. The swarm was gone. Not just defeated, destroyed. Every creature that had come to Earth was dead. And the survivors that had stayed behind in other star systems felt what happened through the hive mind. They felt fear. True fear. The fear that humans had given them. They would never come back. They would never threaten another civilization again. Because now they knew what waited for any monster that threatened the stars. Humanity. Admiral Hyanwu stood on a balcony, watching the sunrise through a sky still filled with falling debris. The pieces of the swarm's fleet would form rings around Earth for centuries. A reminder of what happened here. Ambassador Toril found him there. The alien was changed. His glow was dimmer. His movements were slow. He had seen things that would haunt him forever. "We came to save you," Toril whispered. "We thought you were victims." Hyanwu turned. He looked old now, tired, but his eyes still held that terrible light. "No," he said gently. "You came to warn a monster about a threat." He pointed at the burning sky, where the last pieces of the swarm turned to ash. "You just did not realize which monster was which." Toril lowered his head. "What will you do now? Will you conquer the galaxy? Will you become the new swarm?" Hyanwu laughed. It was a soft sound, tired but real. "No, we will rebuild. We will heal. We will remember those we lost." He put his weathered hand on Toril's shoulder one last time. "But we will also be ready. If anything else threatens the innocent civilizations of the galaxy, they can call us. We will come." He looked up at the stars. So many stars. So many worlds. "We are humanity," he said. "We are the weapon that the universe made to protect itself. We are the nightmare that monsters have nightmares about." He smiled, and for once, it was not a terrible smile. It was the smile of a soldier who had finally won his last war. "Go home, Ambassador. Tell the galaxy what you saw here. Tell them that Earth is not just a planet." He turned back to watch the sunrise. Earth is where predators are born. And across the stars, 17 civilizations were finally avenged. The swarm that had consumed them was gone forever. And the galaxy learned a new truth. Some monsters should not be hunted. Some monsters hunt back. The end.